Hey, welcome everybody. This is Dr. Armstrade here with another video for you. This is going to be going over the concept of defense offsets. Now, the reason why I decided to do a video solely on defense offsets is because it seems like every year that I teach my arms trade class, I usually get a lot of people asking about defense offsets, and it always seems like they have some type of trepidation in their voice, like this is a very complex topic. And I think because they think, well, this has to do with economics, therefore it's going to be very tough to learn. And no, it's really not. Then again, much of the literature that's out there on the internet, if you type in offsets into Google, you usually get a pretty confusing description and PDFs of 10 or 12 pages going over what an offset is. And that kind of obfuscates the topic when it's a very easy topic to understand. So hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a better idea of what offsets are and why offsets are important and why they are pretty darn common nowadays in the arms trade system. So I guess before we really jump in, let's just ask ourselves, what are offsets? Well, nice of the U.S. Department of Commerce, Bureau of Industry and Security to provide us a nice definition. They say that defense offsets are the practice by which the award of defense contracts by foreign governments or companies is conditioned upon commitments from the defense contractor to provide some form of compensation to the purchaser. In defense trade, offsets can include activities such as mandatory co-production, credit assistance, license production, subcontractor production, technology transfer, purchases, training, and foreign investment. Now, as nice as that definition is, that's rather wordy for a topic that really doesn't need to be that wordy. Really, for you, a basic concept of an offset is just that you're trying to recoup some of the money. So imagine that you're spending a lot of money on a product. Imagine you're going to go out and buy yourself a Porsche. Well, Porsche is going to cost you $90,000, give or take. Now, when you buy that Porsche for $90,000, you're looking at the dealership in which you buy it, and you go, hey, man, I spent $90,000. Yeah, I get a sweet Porsche, but hey, man, can you throw in like the pen and the hat? Because I'm the type of guy that buys a Porsche, so I'm going to want to be able to tell everybody else that I own a Porsche when I'm not in the Porsche. So I'm going to need that hat. So they go ahead and give you the pen and the hat, and then you feel like, oh, okay. Like now I feel like I got something back. I saved something psychologically, maybe not financially, because the hat's only going to be worth $20. But I guess if you buy it at the Porsche dealership, it's probably going to be price tagged at $80. But the point is it feels like you got something back for this large purchase. A defense offset is kind of psychologically the same thing. The buyer of these large capital defense goods, and when I say capital defense goods, I'm talking about these larger defense products like ships, planes, tanks, things like that. When they're spending a lot of money on these goods, they're going to want some sort of return for the investment because it's a lot of money. How much money is it? Well, let's go ahead and kind of put that into context. The F-35 is currently, when I looked it up, was $77 million a piece. That's a lot of Porsches. To put it into further context, the P-51 in World War II was being purchased by the U.S. government. P-51 is a fighter plane during World War II, for those of you who do not know, so it's still a plane, just like the F-35. At that point in time in World War II, we were spending $51,000 a piece for them, oddly enough. If you go ahead and control for inflation, bringing it in $2020, it comes out to somewhere around $675,000 a piece. That's substantially lower than an F-35, right? So that kind of illustrates how expensive these high-tech defense goods have gotten. So when a state decides to purchase these defense goods, they usually purchase them in lots. They're going to want some sort of money back. Unless you're states who just don't seem to care about spending a whole lot of money on probably something that you won't need. Yes, I'm looking at you, Uganda, for purchasing the fleet of Su-30s. Even though you have no threat in the region, and the only thing that you can seem to do with them is fly them over tourists. Yeah. Fun fact, after they bought the Su-30, the Ugandan pilots actually filed a grievance directly with the president because they thought they were being paid too low. So there's nothing like being buzzed by an Su-30 in Uganda where you're on the river by probably what is a very disgruntled Ugandan pilot. Anyway, I digress. So next, we should probably ask the question, Why should I care about offsets? Why are you here watching this video? You may say, well, it's because I'm taking your class, man. Like, that's the reason why I'm watching this, because you may see that I watched it and give me extra credit, which isn't going to happen because I don't know who the hell watches these videos. I can't actually see. But why should you care about it? Well, first is most states have offset requirements. Most states who purchase defense goods now have offset requirements, and the majority of them have direct offset requirements, but more on that later. Not only do most states have offset requirements, but those requirements have been rising. So let's say that a state originally said, hey, 80% of the contract value I'm going to need in an offset. So 80% of that contract value you have to offset in some way. Now there are states out there that actually have a 100% offset clause. So offset requirements have been rising over time. And probably one of the more important reasons why you should care, even if you aren't taking my class, is because the purpose of offsets is usually to diffuse the technology of warfare, which probably should be concerning for you. In certain types of offsets, we transfer how to build certain pieces of arms. So other states will learn how to build arms, and you could have a proliferation problem. That's probably why you should care. Now, that being said, the United States really doesn't have too much of an issue. We're very careful on the technology that we share, but not very many other countries are. I'm, again, kind of looking at you, Russia. You tend to let people build whatever they want, as long as they'll spend enough money. But anyway, now let's go over the types of offsets. There's really going to be two primary types of offsets, indirect and direct offsets. So let's go over direct offsets first. Direct offsets are, just like the name states, direct offsets are directly related to the contract or the goods or services being sold in the contract. So if you're asking for an offset when you're buying a plane, a direct offset is going to have something to do with the plane that you're buying. So you may say, hey, I'm buying that F-35 down at the bottom right of this slide. I'm going to need some direct offset there. You're going to have to teach me how to build the tail fin. So Lockheed goes, okay, I'm going to teach you how to build the tail fin because I'm probably going to be able to buy it from you cheaper than I'm going to be able to buy it from any U.S. producer. So I'll go ahead and teach you how to build it. And that's how they usually do a direct offset. That has to do directly with the good that's being sold. At the top right, we see the Rafale from France that's just won, well, not just won, I guess it's been a few years now, the fighter competition in India. It was a bulk purchase of quite a few Rafales, which was a huge amount of money. But the way Dassault kind of sweetened that deal was they allowed the Indian state to be able to learn how to build the jet engine that goes in the Rafale, which tends to help because that same engine goes into their domestically produced HAL Tejas. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm not quite sure. Most states want direct offsets, though. They don't want indirect offsets. The reason why they want direct offsets is because if we think about it in international relations theory, the international state system is anarchical. There's no higher rule than a state governing what states can or can't do. So the primary role of the state is to be able to ensure the security of the state. So they want to be able to produce weapons to make them feel more secure. So direct offsets are really what most states want whenever they do have an offset requirement. The reason, again, why they want direct offsets is to kind of bolster and help build their own domestic defense industry. And you usually hear about this concept of spin-offs. They say, oh, well, if we can just get a U.S. company to come in here and teach us how to build, or let's take France, for instance. If we get France in here to teach us how to build jet engines, then maybe we can have a spin-off. Like once we learn how to build a jet engine for the Rafale and the Tejas, we can know how to build a jet engine for a commercial airliner that we may produce at a later date, or we may be able to produce something that uses that jet engine. So you hear the term spin-off a lot when you're talking about offsets. Like, oh, well, this is going to have exponential effects in our economy because if we know how to build a jet engine, it's going to help us do so much more. Now, that used to be true when defense goods were lower tech. If you had a P-51 and you knew how to build the piston engine in the P-51, chances are you could probably build a truck engine. The problem is now is capital defense goods have become so high-tech and niche that spin-offs really don't happen a whole lot now. Just because you're really good at building a gold-plated radar dome for a fighter plane does not mean that you're going to be able to make that applicable for anything else. So spin-offs, at least as far as the academic literature has shown, really don't have as huge enough of an effect that you tend to read about just in the press. This particular graph in the center is from a recent report, I believe, from Tufts University, that looks at the amount of jobs that were created by military investments and tax cuts, clean energy, et cetera, et cetera. What they actually find is that the military investment actually doesn't come back with that many more jobs. Like the spin-off effect isn't as apparent or as big as many people think that it is. And there's some other academic literature too that I'll go ahead and put the link down in the description just in case you want to read through that if you're really angry and want to prove me wrong. So let's go over the other type of defense offset, which is going to be an indirect offset. Now, what is an indirect offset? Indirect offset just is any type of offset that has nothing to do with the product that you're buying that's in the contract. They aren't as common as direct offsets. Like I said, most states like direct offsets because they want to bolster their own defense industry. They want to learn how to build new stuff. Indirect offsets don't necessarily help you do that. Let's say that's, you're buying a whole bunch of planes from me and you look at me and you ask for an indirect offset and you go, hey, I really need a hospital. Can you help me build a hospital? And I say, okay, yeah, sure. Well, if I help you build a hospital, then we're also going to take off some of the money that you're going to owe me. And part of the reason for that is because a hospital is going to be able to hire people within their own country and offset some type of economic cost in some way for the importing nation. One instance or example that I always heard when I was working in the defense industry myself was there happened to be this one time where a foreign nation was buying a very large amount of defense product from the U.S., and they were looking to offset the cost of that product, and they were looking for an indirect cost, and they asked the U.S. or the contract within the U.S. to help them build a shrimp farm. I don't know exactly if that was a success or not. All I do know is that the country in question definitely doesn't export a whole lot of shrimp, if any. So it's also popular with states that don't have a strong industrial base to take advantage of direct offsets. If you're a state that really doesn't have a lot of educated people or factories that build high-tech goods, there's no reason for you to have a direct offset because you aren't going to be able to produce anything anyway. So it really behooves you to look for indirect offsets instead of direct offsets. So those are the two basic types of defense offsets, and I hope this video kind of cleared it up for you. An offset is just basically a way for a country that's buying arms to save some money and possibly get some knowledge out of the deal for themselves. Again, thanks for watching. I will look to post another video here probably within the next week or two. I'm going to look to produce a few more videos that are short like this just on basic concepts that directly relate to the arms trade system. So I hope you all have a good time for whatever you're doing, and I will talk to you next time.